G'day guys, talking today about imposter syndrome and something that we're not actually talking about when trying to overcome it. So, let's get into it. Okay, so this is a big thing for designers especially, and even creatives of all kinds, that we get this sense of insecurity in our own heads and can't get past our illogical thoughts, irrational thoughts, all these things that go in our mind when we might be taking on a new client or a new type of job, whatever it is, and we have this self-doubt in our ability or our value and all these things that just muster in our heads to make us feel not worthy, worthless, just an absolute clusterfuck of emotions. And to get past it, you're always told these certain things of trusting your process. Now, it's all well and good to have a set in stone process. That's a very good step to overcome imposter syndrome. The other one is to be self-aware of all the irrationalities that are going on in your head, to actually recognize what is going on up there and to look at it on the table, write it down, whatever it is, to see the broad scope of what it is you're going through. The other way to go about it would be to break the logic of your illogical thoughts. Now, you might be thinking, I can do this job for $5,000, but I don't think that a client would pay that. Did you ask them first? It's these little thoughts and insecurities in our own heads that we get all this worked up in ourselves. And to get past that, it takes a real kind of person to get beyond those illogical thoughts and make them as logical as hell. But still, that doesn't solve the problem. And the next one is understanding your value. Now, value is something that we've kind of touched on already in some videos and content here on G'day Design Live. For instance, we've covered how to work out your internal hourly rate by working out how much you need to make in a year and then dividing that with that easy multiplication process that I gave you guys. The other way to do it is to look at project rates, which we've also talked about the difference between project and hourly based rates. And then the other one that we probably haven't done at the moment is value-based pricing. However, though, to understand your value in terms of a monetary sense is one thing, but to understand your value of what it is that you offer to your clients is another thing. And you might be thinking, am I worthy enough to be doing this job? Could I do a logo for Nike, or could I do something for the Apples of the world? And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I'm just a one-man band. I could never do that. That is a very limiting belief in terms of your mindset to try and overcome. And to be honest with you, you can't do all of these things yourself. Which leads me to why I want to talk about the way that I have overcome imposter syndrome on 2 occasions. The first, when I first started G'day Frank, my design business, and the second, just recently when I started G'day Design Live. It's interesting. But to do so, I don't want to have it come out of my own mouth because there was somebody else in the picture that helped me get through this. And I want to introduce you to that person. It's my wife, Sam. So this is Sam, my wife. How you going, darling?
Yeah, all right.
So Sam's going to give you a perspective of the way that I overcame imposter syndrome. So if we go back to, I think it was late June 2018, so last year, not very long ago. It was when I first started G'day Frank, and it was one of my first clients for that business. And for me to charge the rate I wanted to charge, I was being met with some objections, and I was getting all up in my head. And then I turned to Sam. What did I say?
Well, first we talked about if I thought the price was fair for the work that you were doing. We mulled over that for quite a while. And then we talked about the fact that this was actually a family friend and what should we be charging someone who is a family friend? Should they have mates rates or should they be charged as an actual client? We talked about it for quite a while. And
over a few days as well.
It was over a few days. And then in the end, I think you just kind of bit the bullet and put forward a proposal and it got off the ground. So I think definitely talking about it in this first instance was helpful. because I could see it going around and around and around in your mind, and it wasn't until you'd actually verbalized it and got it out there that you had the courage to go forward and charge what you wanted to charge.
That's exactly it. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Talking about it, which seems very ironic in that sense, but it's something that I've used to overcome that. And the second instance was when I started G'day Design Life. Now, in my head, I was thinking, who am I? I've only had a business for 18 months.
18 months.
And it was kind of like there's Chris Doe's of the world, there is Michael Jander's of the world. There are many people that have written books, done courses, all these kinds of things. And who am I, some, rogue Aussie, to start something called G'day Design Life and think that people will listen? And, I was setting it apart to be something that wasn't all about me. It was all about all these different things. And I had all this in my head justified, but I still couldn't get past it. And what was lingering in here was this sense of imposter syndrome. And it's debilitating to the point where it becomes maddening. And I'm sure you've all experienced it. And the idea for me was to think, I can't keep doing this in my head over and over. And it was going for about 3 days, to the point where the day that G'day Design Life launched, probably about 3-4 hours before I pressed, send on that first video of me walking up to camera and saying g'day, again, I walked out to Sam, out of the office and into where she was. And what was I doing?
Well, for the couple of days heading up to the launch of G'day Design Life, I could see that you were starting to go into your shell a little bit. You were very distracted. And I could just see the conversation in your head going around and around and around. And I knew that you wanted to talk about it, but it's also a hard thing to broach sometimes because I wasn't 100% sure what you were feeling about it. So when you actually came out to me and said, I really don't know if I can do this, you had that exact train of thought. Who am I? Who am I to offer this kind of information? I'm really not a nobody, but, you'd only been in business for a short amount of time. And I think, again, the thing about talking about it was really helpful. And it was again, a conversation that lasted a couple of days. And
that one instance, though, was like me 10 minutes just pacing.
Yeah.
Like throughout the house and just verbal diarrheaing everything that was in here, out of here, to Sam, and it's being met with that added justification and that added breaking of the logic to say, mate, pull your head in and realise that this isn't what you think it is. Put it out there and see, because it's a limiting belief in your head to think that this isn't something that people want to know. You don't, at the end of the day, if people don't, then that was fine. This was all something of the basis of wanting to I guess, write the book that I couldn't ever find. So to put those resources out there for another Aussie that might be battling through the same kind of thing that I did 2 years ago when trying to start this business. And yeah, that day was just nuts. Like I ended up speaking to another person as well, but Sam was the main, clencher of getting that out of my head, and that imposter syndrome, the wave of just built up tension just went. So within 20 minutes after that, I walked back out and felt so much better, and I was ready to roll and so goddamn excited about it after that. But just that for that 10 minutes, it was just unleash.
And it wasn't a varying conversation. It was the same few points that Frank was trying to get across, but he was wording them in different ways. And I could tell that he hadn't got it out of his system because he kept reiterating this point, this point, this point, but just in a different way of speaking.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you had completely got it out that you were happy to go back and push the button.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And I think this is one thing that I have not seen anyone really talking about. I see a lot of posts on Instagram about how to overcome imposter syndrome and identifying imposter syndrome. But really, none of those things work because at the end of the day, it's having to deal with your own head and overcoming that. If you can do that and overcome it yourself, fantastic. But that will take you, I'd say, 2, 5 times, 10 times longer?
Easily.
And to overcome that quickly in the heat of the moment, you either need to push through it, obviously, and just be, qualms with it, or talk about it. That's pretty much it. And that's how I think a lot of us as designers could go about things, to turn to our spouse, to turn to a friend, to turn to me if you would like to turn to me. I will happily listen, and you can verbal diarrhea the hell out of it, of whatever is going on in your head, and talk about it. I encourage you to talk about it. And if you understand what imposter syndrome is and does to you, and how it can affect yourself and your business and those around you, talk about it.
Talk about it.
All right, guys, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you, Sam.
That's all right.
And we'll see you next time.